is that darn Cardi Jew? They're making us rabbinists look horrible. Shalom and welcome to another exciting edition of the Torah Watchman Show, LLC, hosted by none other, the famous but the humblest Cardi Jew. Yes, ben-Emmett, podcaster and YouTuber. Hope everyone's well. Yes. And I want to first of all thank you so much for tuning in with me once again on YouTube /Word and Board. That's where you can find me, okay? And also, welcome to my newest Cardi Facebook group page there for the East Coast. Why did I start this? Well, I've had some interesting disagreements over Cardi Jews in Europe and other places like this. It's just silliness, like arguing about, does the prophet Obadiah, is he a liar? If a prophet of God is a liar, then the God who sent him was a liar. I cannot believe people sometimes. Listen, this Torah-centered Jew left rabbinical Judaism for the sole purpose of accuracy. Yes, Emmett truth. That's what my name stands for. Yes, if a prophet of God says something, it doesn't matter if it's inconvenient for my estimation and my appreciation or understanding or enlightenment. God's word is final, it's perfect, and it's divine. It doesn't need any more additions or subtractions like the rabbinists love to do. And over the Middle Ages, they got away with so much plagiarism. Yes, I don't want to get in trouble, but anyway, that's where I've been with. But anyway, this is Torah Parshah, and this is Vayechi. And Vayechi essentially means, and he led, and we're talking about none other than Yaakov of blessed memory. His legacy, his great legacy, ending in Goshen, Egypt, which began the initial chapters ahead of Shemosha coming up in the second book of the Holy Torah very soon. But let's get started. I hope everyone's been well. I've had this head cold, and some people have COVID and all this. Hopefully there's no pneumonia going on, but it is the flu and cold season. It's just what it is, and Jews pray and thank God for the winter months. Why? Because in Jerusalem and elsewhere in Eretz Israel, this is make it or break it for the spring and summer and planting season. We hoping to have cooler temperatures to bring those strong northwestern winds off the Mediterranean coast and come in, and we've had some really good rains in Israel. Yes, and if anyone is tuning into me with Israel, and I have a lot of new Israeli friends on Facebook, you can find me on Facebook, ben-Emmett. Yeah, you can find me there if you want to use Facebook. And I'm going to see you hopefully next year, 2024, at least the Gregorian year. I'm going to see you. And I'm traveling to Ashdod. That's where I plan on spending the rest of my days there. Yeah, until I hit 120. Anyway, let's get started. Now we're talking about Yaakov and his 12 sons situated in Goshen, Egypt. Where is Goshen? Most people know the stories, okay? But quickly, it's the fertile lowlands there, just west of the Nile River, and all the tributaries that feed into that area that gives it so much fertility. It is the most richest land. You hear about Fertile Crescent here. It is the most richest area in Egypt. Even today it is, okay? The rest of Egypt is very dry and desert. I mean, you've seen the pyramids and the Sphinx and everything else. You know how dry it is there, right? But in that northern area of Egypt, it is fertile. I mean, and this is where God had planted the small baby nation of Israel, to grow up into a great and powerful nation in the future. We all have humble beginnings, right? Let's get started. You can turn with me to the book of Genesis or Bereshit, chapter 47, verses 28 to chapter 50, verse 26. And I'll have a brief synopsis, kind of layout and format for you, where we're going to break this out in 7 aliyahs. That's just tradition. We just break it out in chunks to allow this Jew to take a deep breath before I begin the next, right? I hope everyone's well. Verse 28, I like to read the first verse of the first aliyah as a milestone, okay? So to get forward, okay? Now, Yaakov lived in the land of Egypt for 17 years before he finally died and ended his life at 147 years. That's a long time. That's actually longer than the great servant and prophet of Moshe lived. Well, God had a lot of unfinished work to do in Yaakov. He was the inspiration of the entire tribe of Israel. And he probably had the greatest of all anointings there as a final patriarch there of blessed memory. So in the first aliyah, we talk about the life and legacy of Yaakov ending at 147 years. Unbelievable, right? I believe it because the Torah says it, okay? So Yaakov sensed that his days were numbered, and he summoned Joseph. I'm sorry, but some fathers choose favorites in their sons, and sometimes children are more amicable to be loved and nurtured more than others that are more resistant and more independent. It's just how we were built and designed by the divine creator. There's reasons for everything. Don't knock Yaakov because he chose favorites. You have 12 children. Imagine having 12 children. That's bigger than the Waltons, right? American show. But anyway, he loved Joseph very much. He loved Benjamin so much. They're the 2 natural-born sons of Rachel, his love of his life. She died having Benjamin. It's a sad story. And established Bethlehem from that. But Joseph was summoned by his father Yaakov. It says in the Torah that his eyes were heavy with age, and they were probably closing up, maybe from wateriness or tears or something, or maybe partial blindness. I'm not sure, but he was legally blind. Okay, and when you get that old, things start wearing out, even with me. But Joseph asked when he went to his father Yaakov. He talked to the rest of his brothers there. Okay, he said, by the way, our father is about to pass away. We need to go to his bed right now. But since we're talking about last will and testament, I want to go into the land of Canaan, and I want to be buried there after my administration has finished in Egypt and protecting all of you brothers and all of the people living in the Middle East until this really treacherous and evil set of circumstances of the great famine, in that area during that time. So Yaakov was beginning to become ill. Maybe his heart rate was unsteady. I'm not sure. It doesn't give any details. But when someone is near the end of their life, some people are situationally aware enough to just sense that the end is near, and then they start asking for certain people to come to them. And so Yaakov was literally on his deathbed, and he had only just enough energy left to bless his sons. And this is what we're going to talk about. Now, when Yaakov, not only was he overjoyed to find out that his son Joseph was alive indeed, and not only alive, but second in command to the king of Egypt, to the Pharaoh, right? The chief viceroy of Egypt, right? But that he had 2 sons of his own. Yeah, we're talking about Manasseh and Ephraim. Yes, Ephraim in the future was known as Northern Israel, pretty much. And Manasseh was a big chunk of the nation of Israel and Northern Israel as well, okay? But part of Manasseh, by the way, merged into Judea with Ben-Emmett and Levi before Assyria took away northern Israel. Just give you some context, but understand that these were literally half Egyptian, half Hebrew. Why? Because God had given Joseph and instructed him to accept the bridal acquisition of Potiphar's daughter. Okay? So when you consider the Semitic nation of Israel and tribal Israel, understand there's Egyptian bloodline interwoven within it. And Manasseh had a lot of children and a very prosperous tribe too. Half of Manasseh actually survived the Assyrian conquest of northern Israel. It was carried away in the Far East, you know. And so if you ever go to Judea today and look at some of the Sephardi Jews there, very dark complected Jews, well, they are part Manasseh. They really are. And I have some Red Sea DNA within me too, and I've traced that to Yemenite Jews as well. Very interesting. So Yaakov was overjoyed to see the two sons of Joseph. Well, not see them, but know they're there because he heard their voices. And I'm not sure if they were speaking Egyptian or Hebrew, but I promise you, with Joseph ranked there, his sons went to the very best schools, bar none, available in Egypt. So they were very literate, and they probably spoke multiple languages, I would imagine. As far as the ages, I'm not sure. That's a good question. Probably before their bar mitzvahs, or right around that age. So you can imagine this, and I will have pictures here of this. There's a lot of really good paintings of this, where Yaakov lays hands upon the son of Ephraim and Manasseh to bless them. And they were the two sons that he would bless first. Why? Because Elohim told him exactly what to do and when to do it, and to seek after Joseph before he lost all the strength and gave up the ghost. Okay? Now what's interesting, that Joseph asked his father to bless Ephraim and Manasseh, but one of the sons were born a little bit earlier than the other. And it appeared that Yaakov was confused. So bear with me. In verse 10, if you follow along, I hope you are, Israel's eyes had become very heavy-aged to the extent he could not see clearly. Okay? So he drew them near him. You know how you get up like 4 o'clock in the morning, like I do, to go to work, and you just feeling for the light switch or whatever. You just feeling and touching. You've seen the beautiful people that are deaf, have lost their eyesight, they're legally blind, and how they can just other senses just take over with a cane, and how they listen and everything else. I think this blindness is something that's been with Yaakov for quite some time, and he probably was acclimated to his environment. Okay, we're nearing the second Aliyah. So Joseph presents his two sons, placing Manasseh, the firstborn, to Jacob's right hand, and Ephraim to Yaakov's left. And in the painting of this, I'll show you the image right here. It literally, Yaakov had hands on both of the heads of the sons. But Elohim told Yaakov to do something a little bit different. So bear with me. So Joseph took the hands of his aged father and placed them, according to his estimation, on the correct son's firstborn versus second to firstborn, in that order. But, just like almost like a magician, Yaakov crossed his hands like this to the other son. So Joseph was confused about this. He thought his father was confused and just old and didn't know any better. But he blessed them in that way. What Yaakov said, may the angel who redeemed me from all harm bless his use. Like Refuah Shalima, like the angel Raphael, going before them, and may be called by my name and the name of my fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and may they multiply abundantly like fish in the midst of the land. I want to point out something quickly. I don't have to say this to any Jews that are tuning in with it. My target audience is very diversified. Why? Because I have an open door, like Abraham had an open tent, 4 directions, although every wind would blow, he had his tent open to welcome all kinds of strangers and proselyte and other people that were learning about tribal Israel and learning about Noahidism and other things of this nature. I have a welcome heart to everyone. So there may be some Christians out there, maybe some Messianic Jews out there, maybe some Sephardic Jews out there, maybe some Orthodox Jews out there, maybe Jews that are secular and non-observant. I love you all, Israel high. But what I'm saying is that when you want to know how to pray, don't ask Jesus, okay? When you pray and you want powerful prayer, you fall on your face on the ground. Why? Because when you get before a king and you make a petition, you fall on your face before the king, okay? Then you say, in the name of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Yaakov. There's powerful words when you say that, okay? Because those blessings and anointings literally pass from father to son. I just wanted to throw that in, okay? So in verse 17, moving forward, I'm reading from my notes. And Joseph saw that his father was placing his right hand on Ephraim's hand, and it displeased him because he knew the tradition of the firstborn inheritance. You remember the scandal with Esau and Yaakov with all of that? And, I'm sure he knew that story and didn't want the sons to quarrel with each other. So he held up his hands, father's hand, to remove it from upon Ephraim's hand to place on Manasseh's head. And he probably did this respectfully too, because everyone was watching this. Everyone's watching this. Okay? So in the third aliyah, Joseph was disturbed that Yaakov placed his right hand on Ephraim, so he attempted to switch the hand back the way he had it. But Yaakov responded, he interjected, explaining that the younger brother will be greater. The younger brother will be greater. Just like Yaakov, within maybe, 15, 20 minutes, was younger than Esau. And he became greater. At least in the end, he will become greater than Edom. Don't want to get into that, okay? So Yaakov blessed the 2 boys further in saying that all of Israel will bless each other by saying, may Elohim make you like Ephraim and Manasseh. And this is true. This is true. 9.5 tribes supposedly were lost forever during the Assyrian invasion of the northern kingdom of Israel. Where were they carried off to? Well, we're only beginning to figure out what happened to them, okay? They were not completely lost. Some of them escaped the Assyrian Empire or escaped from Persian exile. Some of them did return on their own when they could, because they had various change of the guard and kingdoms and rose and fell and everything like this. And some of them did come back. Well, we told you half of Manasseh was in Judea. So that prevailed. And the Jews that were carried off in Persia and Asia and China and Japan and Russia, those areas there, and the Baltics and everything else. And I have Baltic bloodlines within me too, okay? The same as my wife. I just found that out last 6 months ago. It was really revealing. But what I'm trying to say is many of these Jews have come back. What I'm saying is they persevered. And that's where the blessings were, okay? So we're in chapter 49, okay? And in verse 1, I'm going to read the first 2 verses here. Yaakov called for his sons, his other sons, and said, gather, and I will tell you what will happen to you at the end of days. Now, there's some prophecy here. End of days prophecy. They can read this section in Torah. In verse 2, he said, gather and listen, sons of Yaakov. Now, Yaakov was known as Israel, And many times in the Torah at this time, they went from Yaakov to Yisrael simultaneously because God gave them a new name, okay? Just like God gave Abraham a new name, and Sarai. So in the fourth Aliyah, Yaakov summoned all his sons and delivered to each a poetic, sometimes cryptic, parting, personal message with the last beating of his heart, the last breath within his lungs. He was just almost, you imagine, coughing out the blessing. Just every breath was getting harder and harder. His neshama was about to slip away forever. But he has enough energy within him that Elohim gave him at that old age to bless his sons. Reuben was chastised, okay, for his impetuousness for ascending upon his father's bed. A lot of rabbis do not like to talk about this too much because they, like Rashi, the 12 sons of Israel were saints. Yehuda was saints. Reuben was saint. Simeon, only Joseph was a bad actor, right? Yeah, Rashi even said that. But they all had different personalities. They all had strengths and weaknesses. I think Reuben redeemed himself because he tried to save his brother Joseph when he was thrown in that very dark pit. But, he made mistakes in the past in his youth. And we all make mistakes in our youth. We all wish that picture was not taken of us, back in the past, But Reuben, he did walk, he did, put it this way, delicately, that, Yaakov had a number of concubines, okay? So when Rachel and Leah could not produce children anymore, and when women get older, unlike their counterparts, they can't have children anymore. So they have handmaids, okay, wet nurses or whatever. They have people that are younger, and they were like surrogate mothers. So what happened is that I guess Reuben had similar issues with his wife, and he thought that he could, there was a concubine of Yaakov that belonged to him, I guess, and Yaakov was not using this handmaid. Now, I don't know the details, but the Torah says simply that he went into her tent and had intercourse with her, for his own benefit, I guess, to have children. But, it was disrespectful to the father and created a scandal in the tribe. But it was not just that. Simeon and Levi were rebuked for their anger, which expressed itself in the killing of the Shechemites. Shechemites, remember the previous story, the rape of Dinah. I don't want to get into all the details, but they massacred all those Canaanites, okay? They massacred all the Canaanites because God allowed them to do that because they had free will choices. Was it the right choice? That's debatable even to this day, okay? But they were admonished and they had a lesser blessing because of it, okay? Yaakov may have been old, but he had a memory there, and God was controlling the blessings and curses and admonishments accordingly, okay? So Yehuda was blessed with monarchy, success, and raging battle, an abundance of wine and milk in his portion. Zebulun was blessed with success in his sea trade endeavors. In the time of King Solomon, merchant selling was very, very popular. The Philistines were the only one that was ships, and the Phoenicians were on ships. King Solomon actually had ships. And this was the benefactor of Zebulun. And I'm going to show you a picture here about the various royal crest of tribal Israel. And during the celebration of Sukkot, or no, Sukkot, some people, some Jews, myself I do, so I'm a tribal person, I like to put those colorful images and crests, royal crests for each tribe. And some of them are a little bit more ambiguous, some of them more definite. Some people say Yehuda is like a lion. They have a lion there. Other people have different symbols, like Binyamin, had his own symbol, very unique to him. But bear with me, I'm going to read some of these here, because it's interesting. Yaakov likened Issachar to a thick-boned donkey. The donkeys are very stubborn, right? who finds rest and ample work to do. So a worker bee. Okay, someone has to work, someone has to follow, someone has to lead. Okay, so Don was blessed with the tenacity of a serpent and ability to judge, and that snake symbol is used to reference Don even to this day. Verse 19, as for God, I will read you a few verses here. A troop will troop from him, like surge troops or battle troops, and it will troop back in his tracks. In other words, he will both going and coming, he will have adequate support on whatever his endeavors may be. Okay? From Asher will come rich food, and he will yield regal delicacies. Yes, for the king. Okay? Like the Davidic kingdom. Naphtali is a swift gazelle. He is the one who utters beautiful words. Okay? Fifth aliyah, moving forward, God was blessed with bravery in battle. Okay? Asher's blessing is abundance of olive oil. Okay? And again, you'll see that on the crest. Naphtali was blessed with the speed of a deer, and you'll see that too, like an antelope or something like that. Okay? Joseph was recognized for his charm, suffering and righteousness, and it was showered with a variety of blessings. Okay. Jehovah's Witnesses like to pick fun at the Torah and our Bible and saying there were 13 tribes. No, there were not 13 tribes. I know it's confusing. Joseph was not technically a tribal member of Israel. He was used by God, by Elohim, to rule over Egypt, to rule over as protector over the small Jewish population that was growing leaps and bounds in Goshen. His two sons took his place, but they were an aggregate one. Okay? Essentially one, because they came from one father. And that's the calculus of that. Okay? I already told you before how Ephraim was known as Northern Israel eventually, whereas Ephraim and Israel were both synonymous with one another, and Manasseh dominated a lot of Judea as well. Skipping. Verse 27, Benjamin was a wolf, and you'll see that crest too. And in the morning, he would devour plunder. In the evening, he would divide the spoil. So that sounds like he's a little bit devious, maybe. Okay? In verse 28, all these are the 12 tribes of Israel, and I'll skip some verses for time. And this is what their father spoke to them and blessed them, each man according to his blessing. He blessed them. They're Baruch. Okay? This is a long-standing Jewish tradition. And even to this day, the firstborn typically gets the best of the inheritance and the greatest burden of responsibility of Jewish home. 6 aliyah now. Benjamin was likened to a devouring wolf. His tenacity, his ability to overcome, his ability to take advantage and exploit vulnerabilities of the enemy. Yaakov then repeated his request to be buried in Israel. This is very important to him. Okay? Now, Israel, of course, is none other than the tomb of the patriarch at Hebron, which was a Canaanite city, but a small piece of real estate there was actually purchased by Abraham, if you remember that story. Okay? The cave of Machpelah in Hebron. So it was a cave-like structure. King Herod the Great actually built a gorgeous monument or building around that cave structure to this day, and it's preserved. No one has, the Palestinians like to burn it, like to destroy it. They don't show, they claim that the land belongs to them, and the whole area is Palestinian. But why do they destroy things that they say is holy to them? Why? Because they hate the Jews more than their own history that they claim to have, and they don't. Okay, that's just the way it is, and very sad that anyone would disturb something that sacred. Okay, and again, Yaakov passed away at the age of 147. The 6 aliyah was dominated by a royal Egyptian, almost cavalry march. If you've seen like how when Queen Elizabeth passed away and she died, or other kings and queens in England, how they passed away and died in the past, you see all the royal pomp and circumstance and things of that nature. Well, this is how it was, okay? Because Yaakov was treated as a dignitary of Egypt. He even met the Pharaoh and impressed him so much. And the Pharaoh dismissed Joseph of all things. And Joseph was his lucky star, his rabbit foot, his good luck charm, and he allowed him temporarily egress from Egypt to bury his father. Okay? This Pharaoh, whoever he was, he doesn't have a name other than Pharaoh of Joseph, was a decent man, it sounds like. Okay? He was favorable toward the young Hebrew population there. Okay? Despite that they were shepherds. So, an extended mourning period, sitting Shiva, as we call it today. Joseph received Pharaoh's permission to carry Yaakov's body. They probably had it prepared with frankincense and myrrh and other spices, how the Egyptians, and bombing fluid and things like this, because that long journey, taking a corpse like that, it had to be prepared and preserved in some sort of fashion or way. Okay, I was just imagining as how it was. It's not in the Torah. It's not important. So Yaakov's body was carried up into Canaan, and that's a long trek there. It probably took a few weeks to get there. I'm not sure. So a huge funeral procession consisting of all the elders of Egypt, as well as Yaakov's family, went and buried Yaakov. You can imagine they were dignitaries, maybe parliamentary members, I'm not sure, administrative staff, maybe some priests. I imagine Joseph's wife went there, and his two sons went there too. And also it attracted so much attention that even the Canaanites were humbled to see that, because something you don't see every day, an Egyptian cavalry coming into the land of Canaan in this way, among nomadic people, among Canaanites, okay? It's something you don't see every day. You just think about the imagery behind that, okay? So after the funeral procession was finished, and Yaakov's body was interned within the cave of Machpelah in Hebron, Joseph returned, and the whole funeral procession returned back to Egypt. And that's just where Joseph and his sons settled in Goshen to form new communities and new lives there. Okay, they were essentially, at least while Joseph was alive and while he was in control of things, his sons, his brothers, Yehuda especially, and Simeon and Reuben thought that when Yaakov died, that Joseph would have a turncoat per se and use his authority to punish them. And no, Joseph said, "Don't worry about it, brothers. What's in the past is the past. God made these decisions, not me." Okay, that's just showing you the kind of virtuous person that Joseph was. Now, Joseph's brothers feared this, but it was an irrational fear, but it's probably guilty conscience. Okay, so Yaakov was interned in Hebron. Now we're talking about Joseph, of old age and reaching the end of his life too. So in chapter 50, and we were approaching the seventh aliyah, I have a few verses for you for context. So in verse 21 in chapter 50, so now Joseph said, this is his own words in the Torah, so don't fear, I will stand you and your small children, and I will take care of you, okay? And he comforted them and spoke to their hearts. This is very interesting. Men are mostly cerebral, and they don't talk and communicate with their hearts. But, Joseph was the kind of individual that, I don't know, he had foresight. You already know he had visions of the future. And he probably was an empath in that he knew that he had to speak heart to heart to someone to really arrest those irrational feelings of anxiety and fear. Yehuda, I'm sure he had a guilty conscience still and didn't go over it. I mean, he just lost his father, and he could not tell his father he was sorry anymore for devising that devious lie about how Joseph was killed by a savage animal and everything else. But you can just imagine here. Now, Joseph dwelt in Egypt, and he and his father's household, and Joseph lived 110 years. Okay, that's still a long time because 120 years is actually allocated since the death of Moshe to people. And we say, good luck to you. May you live to 120 years of blessed age. That's what we say to everyone, okay? Sefer again, Joseph lived until the age of 110. Before passing away, he blessed his brothers, told them, God would be with him. Don't worry. And literally, he was talking to their children because his brothers are just as old as Joseph, okay? And he told them, eventually, take me to the promised land, take me to Canaan with you, God will lead you. And Yaakov was giving a prophecy that they would be in Egypt for a while, okay? But eventually, they would be carried out by a deliverer, and they would go into Canaan. You know the story about Moshe, okay? I'm not going to get into all of that. But the important thing is here that Joseph wanted to be with his brothers' descendants and their descendants and Israel over 100 years, how long they would need to be there. I want to add one thing here. Rashi and others claim that Israel was enslaved. The children of Israel was enslaved in Egypt for 434 years. That's not correct. The prophecy given to Abraham, and I think I said this before, I'll say it again, was actually going back to about 400 years, but Abraham, of course, was not imprisoned or enslaved in Egypt at that time. So accurately, chronologically, the children of Israel spent roughly 230-something years in Goshen and were eventually enslaved after Joseph died and a new Pharaoh came into power. And this is where we're going to begin with the next. So I hope this was a blessing to you, this Parshah to you, to find out how Israel was assembled, how Israel was staged in Goshen, how God strategically placed them there to be protected. While the Egyptians had normal life cycle, young and old and dying, and had so many children, Israel did everything better. They grew everything more. They were more fruitful and multiplied because you had angels of the good Lord watching over them. Okay, and they were growing to be a mighty nation that eventually threatened the next Pharaoh. And you have to tune in next week to that exciting show where we bring in Charles and Heston and everything else in the burning bush. Now, I'm joking, but I'm saying is, listen, I'm a man of science. I have a master's degree in science. I trust in the empirical method, but the Torah is wrapped within an envelope of science, also in faith, but it also is written in a certain structured way that's ingenious. When you consider what the storyline and story plot, that it is embarrassing to say these stories about the Jewish people. One thing you can count on the Jew, mostly, is that we're brutally honest with ourselves. And I'm brutally honest with you folks when I say, I believe in the Word of God. I believe the promises that were given to Yaakov and were passed on to his children, the messaging that was given by Elohim to Joseph in the visions that really caught the attention of Pharaoh. Folks, I believe the same God can speak to us today, but are we going to answer the phone when he calls? I read something a few weeks ago. What does it mean for the Jewish people to be chosen? And I simply said, Abraham picked up the phone in Mesopotamia. No one else did. They were playing with idols. But Abraham picked up the phone. He said, hello, I'm here. Send me, my Lord, send me, and I will go wherever you call me. This is what chosen means, is when God calls you to service, you are listening and seeking his ways, which are the high road compared to our low road that we travel. Please share the knowledge and wealth and love and truth to everyone's willing to hear it. There's a lot of people resistant that. Like I said before, I get into these silly arguments of the Jews. We should say, Am Israel High. We should say, I love you, brother. I love you, sister. But, we get into this. Live that witness, live that truth, and people will come to you. But be consistent in that. It's like raising a child. You have to be consistent, or your child would think you're a hypocrite, and then they'll drift away from you. We don't want that, right? Listen, for people that feel shameful, like Yehuda, he said, I wish I would have said this to my father before he died. I was so sorry, so rotten what I did about Joseph and everything else. But our self-image needs to be not in the world, but in the Lord our God. Get on your face, get on your hands and knees, bow before the King of Kings, the divine creator, the King of the universe, the King of the world, and say you're sorry. Make amends. Do works of retribution to those people you're wrong. Looking up in Issachar, chapter 18, verses 20, 21, 22, and 23. That is the salvation path, the only one you need to get your life straight with your divine creator, who breathed in your beautiful neshama, your nefesh within you, to make you sentient and make you realize that it's a blessing to be alive, right? Well, Rabbi Ben-Emmett signing out until next time. I'll see you real soon. Be good to your fellow brother. Don't judge him too severely, because he judges us and he watches over us, right? Take care. God bless you. And shalom aleichem.